Welcome to the Gaslight Music Hall. I'll dispose with some of the pleasantries here first. My name is Ryan Hansen, and I'm the president of Bon Voyage Travel. So I'm not part of a river cruise company. I actually run all of our 4 offices here in Southern Arizona for Bon Voyage Travel. I'm celebrating next week my 8th year as the president of the company. So thank you. I was talking with some new friends of mine here. I do have some pretty good perks of the job, considering this year I think I was able to visit 10 countries so far in 2019. Africa, Denmark, Sweden, a whole bunch of others. So I've had some pretty good experiences. Today, our goal is to answer all the questions you don't even know to ask about river cruising. My goal is not to tell you which cruise line you should cruise on, because travel is unique. Travel is personal. You may be traveling for different reasons than the person sitting right next to you. So I'm going to pose some situations for you from one cruise line to another, one river to another, and you and your spouse or friend may elbow each other and say, "That's for us." Or you might elbow your friend and say, "Not on your life." But we'll try to run the gamut. So I may talk a little fast, so if I do, hopefully you can keep up. We've got a flyer for you on each of the tables that is not the full presentation. It's not the coup de grace of River Cruising 101, but it does give you a snapshot of some of the simple differences across the cruise lines that we really promote and recommend. The backside is blank. Am I right? It's blank for a reason. Take notes. Okay, so I do go pretty fast, but today is going to be a lot about the top 5 ... Okay, so, and I have sailed on all 5 of the cruise lines that I'll be talking about primarily today, so I do have firsthand experience. But let's get started. The river difference. There is a difference between traveling on the river. How many people have sailed on a river cruise before? Okay, so you probably know a lot of the things that I'm going to share, but you only may know Viking. You only may know Uniworld, or you only may know the Rhine, not the Danube. We're going to bounce around a lot today. This is my wife and I. This was 2 years ago on Crystal, on the Mozart, which is leaving the fleet in Europe and heading to Asia. So Crystal will have 4 ships in their fleet. We'll talk a little bit about Crystal, but this was on the Mozart a couple years ago. This was in a small town bordering Hungary and Austria. So let's see, hopefully this works.
Is there a repositioning cruise?
I don't know if that's actually a great question. I doubt it would be, they're probably hauling that. That would be an interesting concept. I don't know if I'd want to be on a repositioning cruise on a ship that small in some of the places in the ocean. Top 5 reasons why you should go on a river cruise. Number 1, you're dealing with hundreds versus thousands. These river boats carry typically between 106 passengers and 190. There's very few ocean vessels out there that are in that category for the number of people that you're sailing with. So you're talking a more intimate experience. You're closer to the destination and dealing with much less headache. Boarding, getting on, off, embarkation, disembarkation is a much simpler process. Number 2, great cities, small towns. Obviously, you can't get to Vienna if you're on an ocean cruise. Okay, a little challenging, but you're going to open yourself up to some unbelievable places. On the Seine, going up from Paris to Normandy. Who's been to Léon-de-Lys? Anybody been to Léon-de-Lys? You probably would remember it. At the top of the hill at Léon-de-Lys is Chateau Galliard, also known as Richard the Lionheart's Castle. Pretty cool stuff. You can climb that hill and check the grounds out. You can get to that on a river cruise. A little more challenging on an ocean cruise. The focus is the destination. So many of our ocean ships that are out there now, the destination is the ship. It's the entertainment, it's the food on board, it's the pool, it's the spa, it's all of that. River cruising is about the destination. That is the focus. So keep that in mind if you're thinking, where's the spa? How come there's not as much entertainment? Where's the Cirque du Soleil act? Probably not going to happen, won't happen on a river cruise. You dock in the heart of these little villages and towns. How many people have been to Athens by way of an ocean cruise? Okay, it's the Port of Piraeus. You can't step off the ship and 10 steps later be at the top of the Acropolis, am I right? Who's been to Berlin on an ocean cruise? Who's been to Florence on an ocean cruise? You spend more time in the bus getting there in some cases than you do the actual town, unless you do the 12-hour day that knocks your socks off and you're exhausted the next day. This is much different. You step off the ship and you're in these tiny towns. One of my favorite things to do on a river cruise is step off the boat and follow my nose to the local bakery. Golly, there's always some wonderful bread there, something that they've cooked up that morning that is just waiting for you. Follow your nose on a river cruise. Number 5, treat your river cruise experience as a floating hotel. Unpack once, and now you get to see a whole lot of different destinations. If you like land vacations, this is as close to a land vacation because you're inland, but you only have to unpack once. You're not checking in and out of hotels every 2 days. Bags at the curb at 4 a.m. See you at breakfast at 5:30. Wheels up on the bus at 6, right? You've done that before. Not on a river cruise, okay? But treat it as a floating hotel. Go into it with your expectations that it's, again, not going to have all of the amenities that you could ever want for on the actual vessel itself, but you're going to be out in the evenings. You're going to be off the river boat as much as you are on it during the day. Onboard life. Let's talk a little bit more about what does happen on board. Again, my wife and I there, we did ride those bikes. It wasn't just staged for the picture. So top 5 things of onboard life. Dive in a little bit more. The number of guests. Again, I talked about it earlier. Why does this matter? It matters if you don't want to be around hordes of people. It matters typically in the service that comes to you. Again, river vessels, and we'll get into the specifics. I'll just put it out there. Crystal, 106 guests. Viking, 190. In most cases, same size ship. Okay? So if this matters to you, public spaces on Crystal, a little larger. Staterooms, by average, a little larger. So if that matters to you, that's something you should consider when you're weighing your river cruise supplier options. Next one in our top 5. Holy cow. There we go. Passengers to crew ratio. This is why numbers matter. Look on your chart. You'll see in every category there is a ratio. Passengers to crew. 3.8 to 1. I believe that's Viking's passenger to crew. What does that mean to you? That means for every 4 people, there's only 1 person to provide service or help. So you want the lowest number possible as the first number. Again, not disparaging, facts are facts. Look at Crystal's, okay? Passenger to crew ratio. If something goes wrong, I want more people there to help me than less, right? If I need something in the dining room, I want more people there to help me than less. Okay, so it's also passenger to crew ratio, something to think about on many river vessels that have those high passenger to crew ratios. That means their crew is doing multiple jobs on the vessel. On Crystal, your butler is your butler. He's not also setting up for the dining activities and other things. So if that matters to you, that's important. Jot that down in your memory banks. Food. Okay, food. Some differences. Most of the river cruise lines do not have 24-hour room service. If that matters to you, you better think of Crystal, Uniworld, and some of the suites on Viking do have 24-hour room service. But think of that. Oh, I always love just those ocean cruises. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm a little hungry. Let's just order up some French fries. Not on many river vessels. So you have to know that going in. The number of restaurant options vary from cruise line to cruise line. Some have 2. Some have 6. If you're going to be on the Grand European voyage for 14 nights, I'm somebody who likes variety. I'd like to eat in some different places. So 6 speaks to me more than 2. May not matter to you. Okay, so think of those things as you're starting to look at different cruise lines and what really matters to you. Also, some of the cruise lines, and again, it's not disparaging, just telling you the facts. You're here for 3 things, right? The unedited, unfiltered, unbiased view at river cruising, am I right? That's why I'm doing the presentation, not our river suppliers, because every one of them will come up here and tell you, we have the best food. Cruise Critic gave us an award. We have the best food. TripAdvisor gave us this award. We have the best food. Condé Nast gave us the award, right? What does have the best food? I can't tell you. I don't know. Again, it's personal. But what I can tell you is on Crystal, it's made to order. It's called a la minute. I order my prime rib medium. They cook it right there, medium. On some of the other vessels, again, passenger to crew ratio, it's more banquet style. They've started cooking before you even entered into the restaurant, and it's ready to go. Oh, Mr. Smith needs the chicken. Let's take it out of the banquet dish and put it on his plate. Think of those things if it matters to you. Number 4 on our onboard life, amenities. Think through the floating hotel concept. Some river cruises have bicycles on board that you don't even need to rent. It just comes with your cruise fare. You can get on the bikes, tour around the little city and get back on. Check your sheet in front of you and you'll see some have bikes on board, some have bikes available in certain ports of call. So if that's important to you, make note of those things. Some have spa, some have exercise facilities, most don't. Take a look at that. So if it's important to you to get that spa treatment in on every cruise because you love that experience and you don't want to do it off ship, make sure you're taking a look at the sheets to find out and asking those cruise lines about those things. Don't just expect it, because on ocean, you have pretty much a spa and a fitness center and those activities on every single ocean vessel. So keep that in mind. Shore excursions. Great shore excursions on all of the cruise lines. Some, Tauk, I would say, has the best. So if off-ship experiences that are escorted and planned, Tauk Tours is 90 years old in the overland journey space. Their river cruising's not 90 years old, but they take what they know, they take the expertise and the connections, and they tie that in to their river experiences. So if you want access to things that maybe you can't get elsewhere, Tauk is something that you ought to consider on the river. Everybody has great excursions. Everybody's got the City Highlights tour, the walking tour. Go to this cathedral, get the experience. They have that. So they're all very good. But if you want something that's the next level up, I would definitely consider Tauk. On to the next, top 5. I told you I was going fast. Am I going too fast or are we good? Okay. I don't want you to be here till 6 o'clock either. That's not my goal. Which river? Again, let's start. If you've never been on a river cruise, you should go on the Rhine. That is your first cruise here. So typically Rhine cruises start either in Amsterdam or down here in Germany. You can venture off Amsterdam to Basel. Ends up being kind of, in our industry, the gateway to river cruising. So you're going to get the Netherlands, the German experience. You're going to see castles around every corner. It's a fabulous start to your river experience. If you love flowers, you love tulips, you need to be on a river cruise on the Dutch waterways for tulip time in the middle of April. They all do it. Every one of the cruise lines does it. We're now talking which river to be on. If you love this, tulips March to May, but shoot for the middle. Right in the middle of April is tulip time. Unbelievable with the windmills and the tulips. I mean, come on. Can't you see yourself in that picture or taking that picture, which is even better? Number 2 after the Rhine. And I mentioned this earlier. 85% of all river cruise beds are in Europe. The other 15% are elsewhere. So when I talk which river, I'm staying in Europe because that's where the most river cruises are, 85%. Number 2, the Danube. You get here to the Main-Danube Canal here. So Danube starts up here, typically around Passau, all the way down. Now there's broken up cruises in the middle that you're hitting Vienna and Budapest, but you can get all the way down south. So the Danube, unbelievable. The crown jewel of the Danube, in my mind, Budapest. Just an unbelievable city. And when I say dock in the heart, that's me. That's the chain bridge right there. So you want to talk about dock in the heart. We are about 300 steps, maybe a little further than that, from the Hungarian Parliament building, which you've seen the iconic picture just a minute ago. Hopefully I can go back to it without too much problems. So there's the Parliament building. Here's the chain bridge. That's where we were docked. Okay, and so at night, you eat your dinner. The captain is not leaving Budapest, but he sets sail down the Danube, so you get to look out your window and see the lit up Parliament building. He turns around and comes back the other way, so the other side of the ship gets to see it. It is magnificent. You got to do it. Number 3. That's my lovely wife, by the way, who doesn't work in the industry, but she says she has the best job in the travel industry. You know what her job title is? +1. She's always the +1. All right, number 3 on your list, and I have done this one as well. Now we're going to go up in France. We're going Paris to Normandy. Every American should visit the beaches of Normandy. My grandfather landed at Omaha Beach on D-Day in the first wave and survived and lived to tell about it. Lived till 94 years old. If you can imagine, it's pretty important to me to take my kids there, which I did 3 years ago. Stood on the beaches of Normandy, scooped up a little sand in my water bottle, brought it back to my dad. You want to talk about teary moment. Holy cow. Really interesting cruise. Starts in Paris. Most of the cruise lines have a couple overnights in Paris, so you get the Parisian experience, and then you move up the Seine to Normandy. I mentioned Léon de Lille, that wonderful French town with the Chateau Galliard on this trip. You get to stop at Monet's Gardens on your way. I think that's in Giverny, on your way up. It's a fabulous experience for you. Keep in mind the river cruise experience when you get to Normandy. You're not on the beach. You're not going to step off your riverboat and be at the beaches. This is a little bit of a drive, so keep that in mind as I've set you up for everything should be steps off of the boat. This is one of the experiences that is a little bit further, but I guarantee you, well worth doing. Next river, I believe we're going south of France here, South France, Lyon to Arles. You're going to be sailing out of Lyon down to Arles into Provence. Anybody been to Aix-en-Provence? God, I love that place. That's one of my favorite bakeries is in Aix-en-Provence. Golly, you're going to know more about me than you need to before this is over. But this is a beautiful itinerary getting you into southern France. So different experience from the others, but still magnificent nonetheless from your views. You don't have to follow this path, but if you've been on the Danube and you're saying, what's next? Where should I go? These would be some of the recommendations for me in my order per se. I have not done this one, which is the Douro in Portugal. Starts in Porto, heads down the river and comes back. Porto round trip, I think, on some lines. We recommend flying into Lisbon, doing a couple days in Lisbon, which is right down here. It's about a 3-hour drive up to Porto. So you can enhance your experience by doing a pre or a post in Lisbon. There's Porto. Beautiful area. We'll talk about some themed cruises in a minute. One of the themed cruises is on the Douro. So keep that in mind if you're looking for something thematic. The length of the cruises vary. Some are as short as 5 days. The Seine was a 5-day. It was a 7-night, 2 nights in Paris, 5 nights on the boat. Others get up to, I think Grand Europeans are up in the 14-night category and a little bit longer than that. If you want to, you can go from Amsterdam through the Main-Danube Canal all the way down. All right. I talked about theme cruises. Here we go. Here's some different theme cruises. If you're looking for something beyond just my husband and I want to go on a cruise, Christmas markets. Typically, I believe it's shortly after the Advent starts, so it goes for about a month, end of November. This year's themed cruise, the Christmas markets are November 23rd to December 23rd. This picture, once I can get back to it, this is Vienna. So if you love Christmas, if you love cold, which you live here, so you probably don't love cold, but you need a getaway, right? My wife said it's 91 degrees in Tucson in the middle of October. I need to go on a Christmas market cruise. You might as well. Fabulous experience here. Obviously, great shopping, great food, great drink, the hot drinks that have a little kick in them. You might want to partake on the Christmas market experience. Think about that if we've done the Rhine, we've done the Danube, we've done the traditional cruise in the summertime. We want to have another cool experience. Think about a Christmas market experience. You saw the next one. I'll talk about it once we catch up here. The wine cruises. It's not just on the Douro where the port wine is fantastic in the Douro Valley. Many other of the rivers have wine regions because of how the landscape is just perfectly set coming down to the river with the hills and valleys there for wine regions. So think of that. If I was going to travel with a group of friends, the wine-themed cruise is the way to go. Specific sommeliers on board that are speaking to the local wines of the region. I know most people that love wine kind of like to hear a little bit more about how the grapes are grown, how that grape vine and branch has survived or not survived through all the different weather realities. So wine cruise is definitely an option for you. All right, let's see here. All right, after wine cruises, exotic. Somebody asked me earlier, we've been to all of these places, or most of them in Europe, so we want something even more unique. This is now your 15% of cruises that are outside of Europe. On the left, Vietnam and Cambodia, so you're going to be on the Mekong River. Please bear in mind, when you get off ship on the Mekong, you're still in Vietnam and Cambodia. It's a much different experience than stepping off a river vessel in Vienna. Okay, so keep in mind, we had some clients of ours, didn't realize that. Man, there was a lot of people begging when we got off the ship on the Mekong. It's a little bit different in regards to third world type experience, but it is fabulous nonetheless. Uniworld, and I'll speak to this, has a brand new ship coming out in 2020 that's going to be on the Mekong. Picture on the right is the Zambezi Queen. This is your African river cruise experience. Many of the river cruise lines that go to Africa will tie in South Africa. So you could go in, do some land experiences either in Cape Town or Johannesburg, and then they will fly you up and you're going to be up in Botswana, a little bit of Namibia and Zimbabwe. So that is your African river experience. These ships, both the Mekong and the Zambezi Queen and the ones on the African safaris there, a little bit, you got to temper your expectations of the accommodations. Okay, so they're just a little bit of a step down. So their 5 stars probably a 4-star for us. Their 4 stars probably a 3-star experience for us. So keep that in mind as you go on some of the more exotic experiences like the Mekong or on the Zambezi Queen. There's also close to home river cruise options that are really starting to emerge. The Mississippi, the Columbia, the Snake River. The top picture is the American Queen steamboat. That's your paddle wheel experience. The bottom picture is American Cruise Line. We sell both of these. It's a great close to home. You don't have to fly, obviously, a long way to get there. There's jazz-themed cruises. There's foodie cruises that you can sail on the south part, go New Orleans up to Memphis. Who hasn't loved everything I talk about is food. Who's ever had a rack of ribs at Rendezvous in Memphis? Come on now, somebody. Yeah, or Gates, is Gates Kansas City? I don't know, one of the two. Yeah, I'm a foodie. So close to home, these are options for you that we can talk about a little bit. Again, you can see the style of the ships are a little bit different. It is something that we will see most likely in the next couple of years. Some of the major players in Europe on the river are talking about bringing their product to the Mississippi. So that could be interesting in the next couple of years, but we haven't seen any official announcements on that. Family cruises. There's me and my wife and our 2 boys. This was on a Tauk Bridges river cruise. So their entire ship was dedicated to kids 8 to 18. So we sailed, there was 36 kids on board and 60 adults. There were, well, you're going there for this reason. Don't go if you don't have kids or grandkids. And that's something to point out. We were what you might say is traditional, parents and kids. There was grandparents and grandsons, no parents. There were grandparents, kids, and grandkids. There was grandma and granddaughter, 16-year-old, first time she had been to Europe, went on this experience. So again, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but if this is resonating, you've got a 16-year-old granddaughter that you would love to introduce travel to, go on Talc Bridges and have that experience. She will love being with you, and you will love her being with her friends and cohorts. She'll have a chance to spend some time with other kids. The programming is geared to 8 to 18-year-olds. When we were in Paris and went to the Louvre, how many hours did we spend in the Louvre? 3. That was it. We didn't see a fraction of the works in the Louvre. Guess how many hours was perfect for my 8-year-old? 3. That was it. He was done. But we went on a scavenger hunt in the Louvre. The tour directors on Talc are fantastic, and they gave our kids the opportunity to experience the Louvre at their level. It was fantastic. AMA Waterways also has some family cruises. They partner with Disney. So they have, it's less number of itineraries, but they also have some very specific family-geared itineraries and programming. So consider them as well if you're looking for that family river cruise experience. Top 5 FYIs, just some nuts and bolts stuff that you might want to know, and I've touched on some of it already. You're going to hear from a couple people called Viking. We have long ships. Every new build is the same size as a long ship. Did you hear me? It's marketing. Okay, so the length of the ship, 443 feet, 38 and a half feet wide, period. Okay, so that's almost every new build is built that way. Just because you have the name long ship doesn't mean you're any longer. Okay, there are some cruise lines you need to pay attention and look for these things and think about it now. So there are some, Uniworld has some ships that are 331 feet long that are a little older. So when you're thinking of passenger to crew ratio and space and all of that, I want the biggest, the biggest ships, 443 long, 38 and a half feet wide, most of the time carry the most passengers, but pay attention to some of those. Crystal, their 4 vessels, 443 feet long, 106 passengers. So big difference there. But don't get suckered into the long ship discussion. There's a couple of cruise lines that are coming out with some new ships. One came out on AMA, I'll talk about that. That is bigger in a double wide. I'll talk about that here in a minute. I've got some pictures. All-inclusive. You're going to hear this if you talk to our river cruise lines. We're all-inclusive. Well, on some, what does all-inclusive mean? Let's talk about alcohol. Let's start there. Some cruise lines that say we're all-inclusive mean you can drink all you want at lunch and dinner, but do not ask for a drink after dinner or you pay for it. Okay, so know that going in. Some cruise lines, AMA Waterways, decided to step their game up. They said, free-flowing wine and beer at lunch and dinner, and we'll throw in a happy hour before dinner. So you get a before dinner drink. Again, some of you may say, I could care less about the alcohol. Well, then maybe that doesn't matter as much to you. Others say, I would like an after-dinner cocktail with these brand new friends that I met as we're sailing down the Danube looking at the Parliament building, and I don't want to pay for it. You need to be on Crystal or Uniworld. Okay, that is truly all-inclusive when it comes to alcohol. So these things, when you read their brochure, you go on their website, remember this, every travel partner's website tells you what they want you to know, not what you need to know. Okay, so keep that in mind. All-inclusive is not the same from cruise line to cruise line. So if that matters to you, dig in a little bit deeper. I would say, maybe more importantly, talk to one of our travel advisors who can give you those answers and you don't have to dig in. Okay, we have 5 travel advisors who I believe the least experienced travel advisor at our Bon Voyage office here in Oro Valley, I think has been in the industry for 28 years or more. So we're talking well-traveled, well-experienced. They know this stuff even deeper than I do. So talk with one of them. If you live more closer to Central Tucson, come to River Road. We have a bunch of staff there that have the same level of experience to help you navigate all of these different nuances that I'm throwing your way. Water levels. Anybody experienced a water level issue on the river? Okay, it happens. Okay, so a lot of people think that you avoid Mother Nature issues by going on a river cruise, where on the ocean you have maybe some rocking and rolling, and I don't want to deal with that. On the river, you pretty much don't have the seasickness. You can see the sides. There's not a lot of current. You shouldn't worry about that. But invariably it could be low water, boats can't sail, drafts are too deep, could be high water, can't get under the bridge. Okay, so these things happen. One thing that you need to think about is, how is the river cruise line going to communicate to me? How am I going to know that there's low river? Can't they predict these things? Isn't there a weatherman in Germany that can tell me? It's tough because you're dealing in inches on the river. Okay, so think of that. The drafts, if I've got a clearance of inches, so a good rain this week, if the water's low, I could still go on my cruise next week. So if you get frustrated, and I know you do, because I would be there as well. Gosh, we booked this cruise a year ago. I got to the port ready to get on board, and they told me that there's low river and their part of my itinerary is going to be disrupted. Be prepared. That can happen. This year has been less disruptive than last year. Last year was very severe in August through the end of the year with low water. One of the cruise lines that has an advantage over others when it comes to high water and low water situations is Viking. Viking, one of their hallmarks, I'll talk about them in a minute here, consistency of their fleet. They have the most ships on the river, and a lot of times they're passing each other, going in one direction to the other city. If you come to a bridge that is impassable, what Viking will do is send you on an excursion, move your stuff from one boat to the other, and guess what? It's the same deck plan, the same ship, the same suite number. You will close your eyes, turn around 10 times, open them up, and you won't know you're on a different ship. That helps versus some of the other cruise lines that have one ship in the area and they end up staying there and bussing you out to Bratislava and back. Okay, that happens too. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It happens. So think of that. I've said a couple things that you might say, wow, this guy wouldn't sail on Viking. Well, there are some great things about what Viking does. This is one of them that really could impact your experience. So just know that that can come. That's our job here at Bon Voyage, is to present you as much information as possible for you to make an informed decision and not be surprised. Okay, so that's our goal, is to try to do that for you on any trip that you take. All balconies are not equal on the river. Okay, if they say it's a balcony, is it a French balcony? Is it a Czechoslovakian balcony? Some you can step out, some you can just open up, some the windows go down like this. Does it matter to you? Are you somebody who loves balconies? Well, think about this now on the river. Okay, so if you've never been on a river cruise, this is going to sound really weird to you. If you've been on a river cruise, you're going to say, yep, I know exactly what he's talking about. You'll go to sleep, docked in a city, you've had a beautiful view across the riverbank, you wake up, and there's another river boat right next to you. And when I say right next to you, I'm talking like you can touch each other. Okay, so this happens. Okay, many of, especially the major cities, there's minimal dock opportunities. So there's 4 and 5 ships that are docked right next to each other. And if you're on the outside, you got a great view, but you have to pass through these ships to get to land. Okay, so this is a real thing. Is that an inconvenience? It might be for you. If you have some immobility issues, that might be a challenge. So we need to talk about what is the best itinerary for you that has the least number of docks that have those situations. But no, I'm going to be sitting on my balcony every morning staring at my next door neighbor across the way on a different ship. Keep that in mind. So balconies may or may not mean as much to you if that's your experience and what you want out of a balcony. But when you're sailing down the river, there's never a bad view. Okay, on ocean cruise lines, day at sea, some people love just looking at the ocean. That gets old after a while, right? It's the same water. On the river, there's never a bad view outside your window as you're sailing. But you can also get to the top deck. That's my favorite spot on a river cruise as you're sailing, is you can climb the 2 staircases or the elevator because it's not big. Get to the top deck and experience it that way. So balconies may or may not matter to you, but they're not all equal. Evidenced by the number of people in this room, river cruises are hot. People are flocking to river cruises. They sell out early. Okay, this isn't a marketing ploy. This isn't me trying to create a false sense of urgency. Come book now for your 2028 river cruise. I'm not talking about that. As the itineraries are released by the river cruise lines, just remember in travel, if you want what you want, know what you like, and want as much flexibility in picking, book early. Okay, and so this is pretty much every cruise line. One of the cruise lines, Viking, if you are thinking of Viking for next year, you better book now. Very often, come our February show, when we have it at El Conquistador here on February 16th, see you there. Little shameless plug. Viking's cruise capacity will be over 95% of their sailings in that year will already be gone. Okay, so if you know what you want, let's get on it now so that you can get what you expect.
6 months, 8 months, 12 months, what do you say?
The question down here was how far out is far out? If you're looking at next summer, I'm thinking 9 to 12 months makes the most sense to provide the most opportunity, right? The most flexibility. Is there opportunity in February to book for an August sailing? Absolutely, but it may not be the cabin you want. It might not be the exact itinerary. Did you have a question on this too? The itinerary releases are different for each cruise line, but they're not as far in advance as the ocean ones. So right now we're seeing ocean itineraries in 2022. We are booking cruises at that far out. Typically, you're only going to be looking a year or so in advance. I don't believe 2021 itineraries are out yet. Or are they out, Michelle? Okay, so there are some out. So, but I don't think 2022 would be out just yet. So you could look at 2021. The further out, the better, just more options for you. So keep that in mind that they do sell out. Top 5 cruise lines. Again, this is my opinion. You have your sheet there in front of you. There's a few cruise lines that you might know or have heard out there that aren't on the sheet. Doesn't mean I don't recommend them ever. I just love these 5. I've been on these 5. That's probably why I like them. These are probably the 5 we promote the most, but we have relationships with all of them. So I'll just name one that's not on. I don't think Avalon is on the sheet. We recommend Avalon. Okay, I have not sailed on it. I can't speak to it as knowledgeably as I can these others. And so if that's something you want to talk about, our staff can help you with their column of checks and non-checks to understand the differences between Avalon and the rest. That would be one that's not on that sheet. We'll start in alphabetical order because I want to be diplomatic. AMA Waterways, a really good cruise line known for, hopefully my stuff comes up here, 5 things. I've got it. Modern in decor. This picture is actually one from their new ship, the AMA Magna, which I will talk about here in a minute. Modern decor, contemporary styling in their ships, but yet it's personal. Personable, personal. It feels more like home. They have 23 ships in their fleet. Their company is family owned. Okay, it's a husband and wife that own the cruise line, and then one of their best friends in the world is their vice president of sales, Gary Murphy, who I know very well. Anybody been on a Brendan vacation to Ireland years ago? This is the Murphy family who owned Brendan Vacations. This is Jimmy Murphy's son, Gary. AMA Magna's the brand new ship for AMA, released in May of this year. It's what I call a double wide. It's not 38.5 feet wide, it's 72 feet wide. Okay, so this has a much more expansive feel, but it cannot go on every river because of the locks that are on the Rhine. It's not on the Rhine, it's on the Danube. So if you want to go on the Danube and you want a little more space, it's twice as wide, and they only have 34 more passengers than their normal river vessels. So they don't jam people in there. So it does create a little bit more space for you. It is a beautiful ship that I've seen only in video and pictures. Hopefully I'll be able to board AMA Magna at some point. I have been on, I mentioned the Crystal Mozart, which was an older ship, but it was also a double wide on the Danube. I mentioned that's leaving the Crystal fleet. So I've been on the double wide type feel, and it is definitely different. Speaking of Crystal, as I mentioned, they've got their 4 ships. It is the most all-inclusive experience on the river, from alcohol to excursions to all of those types of things. Youngest fleet, if you look at just the 4 ships that they have. Every cruise line has young ships, brand new ships, but if you look at it as an entirety, the entire fleet, it is the youngest. If you want exemplary service, Crystal is the way to go. Okay? Viking doesn't have butlers. Alma doesn't have butlers. If you love a butler, and let me tell you, if you've never had a butler, you don't know what you're missing. You need a butler. Pretty cool experience. And your butler is your butler. I mentioned that earlier. Great service on Crystal. And if you've sailed on their ocean product, it is just as good or better on the river. So keep that in mind. And they really are truly a luxurious experience. So a lot of these cruise lines will say they're luxury. Eye of the beholder. I would say that Crystal is definitely a luxury experience. Next one, Tauk. I mentioned they are also as close to all-inclusive as pretty close to Crystal, almost exactly. This is more of an escorted feeling. If you've ever been on a Tauk land vacation, you know you want for nothing. Someone is always there. A tour director is always there to take your bags, make sure you have the transfers, ready to go on an excursion. Very knowledgeable, personable tour directors, cruise directors on their ships. Tauk is a really neat experience. They have 9 ships. Once I get to that slide here. I mentioned the overland journeys. So again, your excursions off of the river vessel, Tauk does it the best. They have the most unique, most access, best curated excursion experiences. I wouldn't use the word curated on every river vessel. They have programs, they have excursions. I wouldn't necessarily say they're all curated. They're curated on Tauk. And if you know, I think you understand what I'm talking about with that. 9 ships, as I mentioned, and I talked a little bit earlier about their Tauk Bridges experience with my family. So if that resonated to you, they've got multiple river experiences. They've also got, Tauk Bridges has land programming as well, but they've got a Danube experience, a Rhine experience, a Seine experience, and I think they also go down to the Rhone they start in Paris for a few days and go to the Rhone instead of going up the Seine. So if that's something that you want to talk more about, again, I would not recommend kids under 8 years old. They tell you you have to be 8. Don't push it. Don't say my 7-year-old can do it. They better be able to handle it because it is more educational in nature than it is just let's go have some fun. It's not your Norwegian cruise line experience, slides and splash pools and zip lines for the kids. Tauk is a little bit more educational in nature. So as a grandparent or a parent, that might resonate more with you because you don't want to be at the pool fighting for a deck chair with 6,000 of your closest friends. Uniworld. What's the calling card for Uniworld? They are also all-inclusive, as close to Crystal as I mentioned earlier, in regards to especially the alcohol service. Their design is completely different than everybody else. Completely. Why? Old European design. This is one of their staterooms. This is a bedroom on Uniworld. Okay, I think this is on the Joie de Vie, I think. But every one of their vessels is decorated to the local place where they're sailing out of. French-inspired on the Seine. Beautiful ship on the Joie de Vie. So all of their vessels are old world European style, Victorian style. So if this speaks to you, it's a boutique hotel experience. So unlike Crystal, if you were thinking hotel, what's the comparison? I would probably say Crystal is the Ritz-Carlton. Okay, consistency, you kind of know, but it's luxury. It's the Ritz-Carlton. I would say Uniworld is that little boutique hotel in Paris that no one talks about, but everybody loves when they're there because it's the nuances, it's the subtleties, it's the artwork. If that speaks to you, then Uniworld is definitely something you should consider. Uniworld, as I mentioned, has 4 ships coming out in 2020 that they're calling super ships. Vietnam, Cambodia, the Porto run on the Douro. They're coming out in Egypt and one other place, and I can't remember off the top of my head now. I've remembered everything except that. So look at those if those are different enough for you to take a look at. But think of Uniworld as one of a kind. Every ship, you could be on a different Uniworld ship and have a completely different experience because of the design and the decorations. The family that owns Uniworld also owns the Red Carnation hotels. So if you're thinking of that, if you've ever been on an Insight Vacations experience or Kontiki or Some of the other, they've got a bunch of other family of brands that they own. They also own Uniworld. So that is a really well-run company. Last one in our top 5 on the river cruise lines is Viking. Hopefully I can get to it here. Viking, this is your standard stateroom. If I were to take an analogy to a hotel, it's the Sheraton. It is consistent. Like I said, think about that moving from one ship to another if there's an issue. The consistency of the fleet. You know where the coffee maker is. You know where the towel rack is. When I get out of bed, it's right there. Some people love that familiarity and consistency. They bring it. Okay, so keep that in mind. It's more Scandinavian in design. The owner of Viking Tour is Norwegian, and he is all Norwegian. Okay, there's no laughs, there's no jokes. It is sleek design, Scandinavian feel. It's better IKEA, but same concept and design. So if you looked at that Uniworld picture and you got a stomach ache, Viking might be more of your speed. Or if you looked at that Uniworld picture and said, oh my gosh, how great, I'd love to have tea on that little table right there. It's my wife. Viking, not as exciting from that standpoint on the decor, but the consistency is there. It matters to you. Travel is personal. Their big focus is destination. So as I mentioned, no spa, no fitness center, no bicycles. You can get bicycles on land and they'll help you with that. They want you to understand they're there to bring you to the destination. The next thing for Viking is, and I know what it is, value. That's the next thing that will come up here. From the proposition of all of these 5 cruise lines, I'm not going to hide behind it. In most cases, Viking is going to be your best economical buy. But at the same time, you get what you pay for. Okay, so if service matters to you, if all-inclusive matters to you, if decor matters to you, then think about that. You pay for it in most cases. You want a great steak here in Tucson? Fleming's. Go to Fleming's. You go to Sullivan's. I want a great steak. If I want a good steak, and I hope that no one is affiliated with this second restaurant I'm going to name, I want a good steak, I want a fun outing, I go to Outback Steakhouse. Right? I love Outback Steakhouse, but I know what I'm going to get, and I know what I'm going to pay for it. But if I want a little bit of a different experience, I want a little bit higher grade potentially of the beef, you know what? I'm probably going to Fleming's. Think about that on the river. What matters to you is what's most important. 61 ships. It's another, they own the river space. You've seen the commercials as you've watched Downton Abbey. Every third commercial was a Viking commercial, and you knew it. It's like they want to be Kleenex. That's who they want to be. Well, no one says, can I have a tissue? They say, can I have a Kleenex? Right? They want that brand recognition. And the consistency of the fleet allows them to do that. And they have 50% of all the beds on the rivers in Europe. 50%. So they do know what they're doing, and they're very consistent. And we've had great experiences with them when there's been some potentially issues on a ship. Their customer service has come through. So a really good value. Keep them in mind. Please don't take any of the other comments I've said as disparaging by any means. Just wanting to point out the differences. And again, what matters to this table doesn't care about. They care about some other things. So that was what today is all about. We're closing in on the end here. Does anybody have some questions? A lot. Let's start here. You have another one.
Airfare. Do all of these lines book airfare for you? Is it competitive, or do you do that separately?
Airfare was the question. For those of you that couldn't hear in the back, can you book air with the cruise lines? Is it a better buy? Is it better accessibility? Keep in mind a couple of things. All the cruise lines you can get air through. We can also sell you air separate. Sometimes it is better with the cruise line. Sometimes you need to keep in mind, this goes with all cruise lines. You may see free air, discounted air. If the routing matters to you, really, really important. If the airline matters to you, really, really important. These cruise lines have deviation fees. Don't be afraid of a deviation fee to pay that so that you can pick between a number of them. Most of the cruise lines do not. If you've booked for your cruise next September and you've booked your air, who's booked their air with the cruise line and has waited until about 3 months before the trip to get your itinerary at the earliest? Okay, so you don't know your itinerary when you book the cruise. So they have contract air. I will say, in the industry, on the rivers, Viking probably has the best air program for your money. Yeah?
Laundry.
Laundry service, some have it. Most, it's not. I don't think most have the ability to send something out. I think there's services. Crystal would be your best bet on that. Again, start talking all-inclusive. I'm not sure. I'll have to, well, the laundry question, we will find an answer for you. What you will find is I know what I know, and I don't even know everything about the rivers. So laundry is one that I'm not 100% sure on. Let's make our way around.
Yeah, can you talk to time of the year, weather expectations, and also crowds?
Time of the year, crowds, and weather. Obviously, I can't speak to the weather. It depends on what your experience, what you're looking for. River cruise in August, everybody knows, don't go to Europe in August. That's the biggest crowd issue, is the Europeans typically vacation in August. So I would stay away from August if you had your choice. Again, depends on your experience. Tulip time, you're looking for something special. If you want the best rates, get on some of the shoulder season, earlier in the season. Most of the river cruise lines don't dip into the water until March or even April, but that's typically when they have the best value, even on some of the more expensive lines, because that's not as popular. Another question I'll have to, do you have an advisor that you work with here at Bon Voyage? Perfect. They should know more than even I do. Yes, ma'am.
Visas seem to be a real problem, at least it is for us.
Visas?
One, they're very expensive, felt to go to Cuba and Vietnam, and getting them is difficult.
Our staff can help you with visas. Is that what you're referring to? Our staff can help you with that, but I do agree. It is getting more and more challenging, and that makes it a little bit more difficult to do things on your own, for sure. All the way in the back.
Any special incentive for being here today?
Yes. Oh, thank you. God, did I pay you for that? Is there any incentive for being here other than the great speaker? Yes, we do. Every cruise line that's here has an incentive, so talk to them. Some are a little bit different than others. Some are like $100 off, $100 in shipboard credit. So there is an incentive. Talk to your advisor. We may have some other promotions that we can combine with that as well. But that would be our show offer today. So each one of those have something. Got you right here.
The only criticism I've ever heard of these experiences are that when you go off the boat, most everybody's together. There's no time to just wander around some of the towns because the boat keeps going, and they'll get on a bus to catch up to it. Are there any cruises that have free time like that?
I actually would say I think that's a misnomer in regards. Most of the places you go to, you don't have to take an excursion, and you are, in a lot of cases, close enough to wander. My favorite thing to do on any cruise line is to take the City Highlights walking tour, and I get there, and right before the tour guide says we're getting ready to start, I say, where's the meeting point? And they say, oh, we're going to meet at the bell tower right there in 2 hours. See you there. I'm gone. Okay, so that's a little trick or a hack. Don't feel like you have to be shepherded through everything. I hear you. You kind of want to, I like getting lost in these towns and stumbling upon little finds. I do think that might be a misperception, that is, it's more sheep herding than it is flexible walking. Right there, my red shirt. Yep.
If you don't want to take certain tours in cities, but you want to start at one and take tours in the embarkation city, can you still use air and all of the other amenities offered by the cruise?
Great question about air offerings, transfers, other things if you wanted. I think your question was, I want to go in early to Amsterdam for a couple of days early, experience the town maybe on my own, a private guide, separate. Can I still take advantage of the cruise line's air? Will they help me with transfers to the ship? Is that kind of what you were asking about?
In a sense.
Yeah.
Yes. It was more sense that I don't want to take 4 days in Lucerne and Zurich, but I'd like to take 3 days in Amsterdam.
Okay.
Can I still use all of the air and other facilities?
Some cruise lines you can use the air, deviate to the dates that you want, but you may forego the transfers because it's not on embarkation day. Some are tied that way. Talc would be tied to what the experience you're looking for. I want to come in early. I want to do a little bit different. You're a Talc guest, so they will, in most cases, provide that transfer and the other opportunities for you, even if you do something different from the group. But most of those are cruise line specific questions that do vary, and our advisors can definitely help you with that. I'm sorry if some of my responses, our advisors can help you, but some of the questions have a lot of nuances to them. Oh, we love Donna. We love them all, but we love Donna. Yeah, we'll stay right here on this side. I'll come back to you in a minute.
Okay, I go into town, I find some great wine, bread and cheese. Can I bring that back and go port to port with that food? Is there any problem with that?
It's much less restrictive on the river than it is on the ocean. So you can bring some things back on. Some, if you want it at the restaurant, corkage fees will probably apply and something like that. You want to pop it in your room. It's much less restrictive on the river.
Even if I'm going between two different countries, there's no problem?
They're not going to really be passing through a TSA checkpoint or something like that. I think you'll be okay. We'll take a couple more because then we might be getting to some really specific questions here, but wait 1 second. Kat? Door prizes, yes. Don't want to forget that.
Are all the ships both heated and air conditioned?
Yes, so the question was about the thermostat. So heated and air conditioned, yes. Again, some may be better than others. You've been on your ocean cruises where the air conditioning doesn't work as good in your stateroom, but yes, they are heated and cooled.
Is there medical on board?
Is there medical on board? Medical is a loose term.
Any kind of...
Most cases on the river, again, think of it as more of a hotel because you're not at sea, but you're always close by to the shore. So most of the river cruise lines have security, however. So they have posted security. You may not know it, but they have security so that people can't just get on and off. It looks less imposing. Like I said, the ocean ones, you have to go to the port and you go through Port Authority, and it's very TSA-like in that case. Rivers are a lot less restrictive with that, but they all have security. But your medical question is primarily because they are closer to medical facilities on the river. They typically, I don't believe, travel with doctors, and the facilities on board would be much less. Again, thinking of scaling down that vessel, that's some of the things you might forego on a river ship. I'll take maybe one more here.
Do the ships travel during the day or at night?
Yes. Do the ships travel during the day or at night? They do both. They do both. And sometimes you'll get 2 ports in the same day. Keep in mind, some of the vessels and cruise lines may say you get a shore excursion, a free shore excursion every day. If you go to 2 ports, you only get 1 free shore excursion. Keep that in mind. So as you're looking, but they will sail in the day and the evening. And when we were traveling on the Talc River cruise, we were supposed to leave Rouen on Bastille Day, and the captain found out that the firework display that was going to go off about 200 feet from our boat was an hour after we were supposed to depart. He changed the depart time so that the kids could be on top deck and see the fireworks right over the top of them. Flexibility on some of those things. They have a little bit more flexibility on the river. I'll take one last one here.
For someone who is prone to seasickness and never has gone on a river cruise, is there any one, I know you gave the order, but is there one river which is better than another, or are they all the same?
I think they're all pretty close to the same, and I would, with confidence, say you're not going to get seasick on a river vessel. I would say with confidence. If you are a client of Bon Voyage, I start every presentation with this, but today I'm ending it with this. Thank you. Thank you for your business. We know there's a lot of competition out there. There's a lot of other people that can help you. Hopefully you've learned a lot today and will continue to come back. If you're a prospect, you've never worked with us before, now's your time. We'd love to see you. Come up and talk to us afterwards. Otherwise, have a great afternoon.